William dragged himself through the front door, so tired he could barely stand, ready to fall onto the couch, then stopped completely when he heard giggles coming from upstairs, a sound that hadn't been in his house for 9 whole months. William Ross's wife, Catherine, had died from a sudden heart attack. One moment she was there smiling and talking, the next moment she was gone forever, no chance to say goodbye, no time to get ready for it. But the really scary part started after the funeral when his twin daughters, Elizabeth and Emily, who were only 6 years old, stopped talking, stopped eating, stopped acting like the world was even there anymore. They would just sit together on the floor holding each other really tight, staring at nothing with empty eyes like someone had turned off a light inside them. William tried everything he could think of, the best doctors that money could buy, special doctors who flew in airplanes from all across the country, brain scans, special therapy for kids who had been through terrible things, experimental treatments that cost $50,000 every single week. 9 months of fighting, 9 months of praying and hoping, but nothing changed at all. Every single doctor said the same heartbreaking words. "Mr. Ross, the damage might be forever, they might never talk again." William felt like he was watching his daughters disappear bit by bit, and there was nothing he could do to stop it from happening. Then a woman named Rosemary came to work as a housekeeper in his home. She was young and quiet and acted like she was used to people not noticing her. Nobody knew she used to be a nurse, nobody knew her career had been destroyed by someone else's lie. But when Rosemary looked at those 2 silent little girls, she saw something that all the doctors had missed. 3 weeks later, on a Wednesday afternoon, William came home from his office where he worked. The house was always quiet, always felt empty, always felt like he couldn't breathe. But this time he heard something, laughter, children's voices coming from upstairs. William stopped right there in the hallway, his briefcase falling from his hand and hitting the floor. "What's happening? Who's in my house?" His heart was beating so fast as he climbed the stairs, following the sound, fear and confusion twisting in his chest. "This can't be real, this can't be happening." He got to the bedroom door, his hand shaking on the door handle. He pushed it open and saw Elizabeth and Emily on the floor with Rosemary, dressed in little toy doctor coats with plastic stethoscopes around their necks. They were checking Rosemary's pulse, giggling, talking to her, actually talking. William's legs almost gave out beneath him. He grabbed the door frame to keep from falling down, tears pouring down his face, his voice breaking as he asked, "How? How is this even possible? What did you do?" Because sometimes when you've lost all hope, God quietly sends someone to show you that miracles still happen, and maybe, just maybe, you need to hear this story today. William's airplane touched down in Boston just past midnight. He had been in London for 3 days closing a big business deal, the kind of deal that would normally have him buzzing with energy, thinking about numbers in his head, already planning the next thing to do. But all he could think about was getting home to Catherine and the girls. His phone rang as he walked through the airport. Massachusetts General Hospital showed up on the screen. His stomach felt sick. Why would the hospital be calling this late at night? He answered, "Hello?" The voice on the other end was shaking. A nurse who was barely holding it together said, "Mr. Ross, I'm so sorry, your wife, she collapsed at home, her heart stopped. The paramedics did everything they could but..." The rest of her words turned into static noise that William couldn't understand. William stopped walking right there in the middle of the airport. People rushed past him on both sides pulling suitcases, talking on phones, living normal lives. But his life wasn't normal anymore. Catherine was gone, no warning, no signs that she was sick, just gone. He stood there in the middle of Logan Airport gripping his phone, the bright lights buzzing overhead, and whispered the only words he could manage. "This can't be real." But it was real. The drive home was like a blur. He doesn't remember calling a car, doesn't remember giving the driver his address, just the cold leather seat beneath him and the thought going round and round in his mind like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. How do I tell Elizabeth and Emily their mother isn't coming home? When he pulled up to the brownstone house, it was dark except for one light in the living room. He unlocked the door and stepped inside into silence, not the peaceful kind of silence, the kind that feels wrong, heavy, like you can't breathe. "Elizabeth? Emily?" His voice echoed through the hallway with no answer. He dropped his bag and moved deeper into the house, his heart pounding harder with every step. Sweethearts, Daddy's home? Nothing, no sound at all. He found them in the living room sitting on the floor near the couch. They were holding each other, Elizabeth's arms wrapped around Emily, Emily's head resting on Elizabeth's shoulder. Their eyes were open but they weren't looking at anything, just staring blank and empty. William's chest felt tight. He dropped to his knees in front of them. Baby girls, it's Daddy, I'm here. He reached out gently, touching their faces, warm skin, soft cheeks. But no reaction at all. They didn't blink, didn't move, didn't cry. It was like looking at two little statues made of stone. Elizabeth, sweetheart, can you hear me? Nothing happened. Emily, please look at Daddy. Still nothing at all. His hands started shaking, panic rising in his throat. What's wrong with them? What happened? He pulled them close, wrapping his arms around both of them, feeling their small bodies against his chest. I'm here, he whispered, his voice breaking. Daddy's here, I'm not going anywhere. But wherever his daughters had gone in their minds, he couldn't reach them, he couldn't bring them back. That night William didn't sleep at all. He sat beside their bed watching them breathe. Two tiny figures curled together under the blanket holding on to each other like it was the only thing keeping them alive. And somewhere deep in his gut he knew this wasn't just sadness about their mom. This was something far worse. His daughters were slipping away and he had no idea how to bring them back to him. The days after Catherine's funeral all blurred together. William barely left the house at all. He would cancel meetings, ignore phone calls from his office. Just sit in the living room watching Elizabeth and Emily. They didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't react when he said their names or tried to hold them close. They would just sit together on the floor hour after hour staring at nothing like they had built a wall between themselves and the rest of the world and he couldn't find a way through it. William started making phone calls, first to Boston Children's Hospital, then to special doctors in New York and Philadelphia. He described what was happening and every single person said the same thing. You need Dr. Marcus Peton. Marcus was the chief of pediatric psychiatry at Mass General Hospital, one of the most respected doctors in the whole country. He had known the Ross family for over 10 years, came to fundraisers at their home, played golf with William on weekends. If anyone could help, it would be him. Marcus arrived on a gray Tuesday morning. He walked into the brownstone house carrying a leather briefcase, his presence filling the room with quiet power. William met him at the door, exhausted and desperate. Marcus, thank God you're here. Marcus didn't smile, didn't offer empty promises that everything would be okay. He just nodded and said, Let me see them. He spent the entire day watching the girls, observing how they moved, how they breathed, taking notes on a small pad he pulled from his jacket pocket. He didn't speak to them, didn't try to get them to respond, just watched them carefully. The next morning Marcus brought in his team of doctors and nurses, brain scans, machines that measured neural activity, reflex tests, psychological evaluations, equipment that William didn't recognize being wheeled in and out of the house. Elizabeth and Emily sat through it all like ghosts, silent, not responding, holding each other's hands the whole time. William stayed close during all of it, his chest tight with hope he didn't dare name out loud. Please let there be something, some answer, some way to bring them back. On the third day Marcus called him into the study. William sat down across from him, hands gripping the armrests of the chair really tight. Marcus removed his glasses, set them on the desk and breathed out slowly. William, I'm very sorry. Those 4 words made William's stomach drop like he was falling. Your daughters aren't suffering from ordinary sadness. Marcus continued, his voice steady and doctor-like. They've entered a state called traumatic catatonic withdrawal. Their minds have basically shut down to protect themselves from the shock of losing Catherine. William's throat felt tight. But they can get better, right? There's treatment? Marcus paused, and in that pause William felt something inside him begin to crack and break. In cases this serious, especially in children this young, the outlook is not good. Marcus's eyes held no warmth at all. We're looking at years of super intense therapy, possibly permanent psychological damage. William, they may never be the same as they were before. The words hit like a punch to the chest. No. William's voice broke. No, Marcus, there has to be something, anything, please. Marcus opened his briefcase and said, There are experimental treatments, neural stimulation therapies, intensive programs. He pulled out a folder. They're expensive, very expensive, but they may offer some improvement. William didn't hesitate for even a second. I don't care what it costs. Marcus nodded slowly and said, I'll arrange everything. And just like that, the trap was set without William even knowing it. The treatment started the following week. Marcus's team arrived with equipment that turned the brownstone into something that didn't feel like home anymore. Medical monitors in the living room, therapy chairs in the den, nurses working in shifts around the clock. Elizabeth and Emily were put on a strict schedule: morning evaluations, afternoon sessions, evening neural stimulation treatments that required them to wear small sticky pads called electrodes on their temples, $50,000 every single week. William paid without even blinking or thinking twice. The first month he told himself it just needed time to work. The second month he watched for any sign of progress, a blink, a movement, anything at all. By the third month he started lying to himself that small things were improvements, when they really weren't. The girls remained exactly the same, silent, holding each other, eyes empty and vacant. William tried to keep working at his job, but his focus was completely shattered. He would sit in board meetings staring at presentations he couldn't process or understand, his mind always somewhere else thinking. Are they eating today? Did they respond to the therapist? Please God, let there be something, anything. Every evening he would come home and ask the head nurse the same question. Any changes? And every evening she would give him the same answer. Not yet, Mr. Ross. 6 months in, William stopped asking the question. He would just walk upstairs to the girls' room, sit on the floor beside their bed and watch them sleep. They always curled together, Elizabeth's arm around Emily like they were protecting each other from a world that had hurt them too much. I don't know what else to do, he whispered one night, his voice breaking in the darkness. I'm trying everything, baby girls, I promise I'm trying my best. But the silence never answered back to him. By month 8 the house felt like a tomb, a place where dead people are buried. Toys sat untouched and dusty in corners. The piano that Catherine used to play gathered dust on top. The kitchen where she used to make breakfast every morning stayed cold and empty. William walked through rooms that used to be full of life and laughter, and felt like he was drowning in sadness. One afternoon his household manager, the woman who helped run his home, knocked on his office door. Mr. Ross, I need to talk to you. William looked up from paperwork he had been staring at for an hour without actually reading. The staff is overwhelmed, she said gently. Between the medical team, the therapists, the daily routines, we need more help. Just someone to handle the basic things like cleaning, organizing, small tasks. William rubbed his face, exhausted beyond words. Fine, hire someone. Are you sure? I can manage the interviews and find the right person. Just find someone, he said quietly. I don't care who it is. She nodded and left the room. William turned back to the window watching rain streak down the glass. He didn't know that the person about to walk through his door would change everything, not through medicine, not through doctor expertise, but through something far simpler, something the doctors had forgotten even existed. Rosemary James showed up on a Tuesday morning in late August. She stood on the front steps of the brownstone house with a single duffel bag, wearing jeans and a jacket that had seen better days. Her shoes were worn at the heels, her hands fidgeted nervously with the strap of her bag. The household manager opened the door and smiled warmly. You must be Rosemary, come in. Rosemary stepped inside, her eyes scanning the grand entryway like she was trying to make herself smaller, like she had learned a long time ago not to take up too much space or draw attention. Thank you for the opportunity, she said softly. Her resume had been simple, just a few housekeeping jobs over the past 3 years, nothing fancy, nothing that raised questions. And that's exactly how Rosemary wanted it, because underneath those few lines on paper was a story she had spent years trying to bury and forget. She used to be a pediatric nurse at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, the kind of nurse who remembered every kid's name, who sat on the floor to talk to them at eye level, who stayed late when a scared child needed someone to hold their hand. She loved that job, lived for it, until the night everything fell apart and her world collapsed. A little boy came into the hospital with a severe infection, a really bad sickness. The attending physician, the main doctor, ordered medication to help him. Rosemary gave it to the boy exactly as the doctor told her to. But the dosage was wrong, fatally wrong, meaning it was so wrong it could kill someone. The doctor had made an error and the child didn't survive, he died. Rosemary fought to save him, worked on him for hours doing everything she knew how to do, but it wasn't enough, she couldn't save him. The hospital needed someone to blame for the mistake, and the doctor who made the fatal error had powerful friends who protected him. The person who signed the report that destroyed her career was Dr. Marcus Peton, chief of pediatrics at the time, a man with enough influence and power to decide who survived professionally and who didn't. A few brutal lines in an incident report saying it was her fault, license taken away forever, career over, reputation destroyed completely. Rosemary never fought it. She was too young, too broken inside to stand against someone like him. So she disappeared, took whatever work she could find and tried to forget she had ever been a nurse at all. Now she was standing in William Ross's home. She had no idea that Marcus Peton was the one treating his daughters, that he was upstairs right now running another evaluation on the girls. The household manager led her through the house explaining the daily tasks she would need to do. Rosemary nodded, listening carefully, taking mental notes in her head. Then they passed the living room and Rosemary stopped walking. Two little girls sat on the couch, identical twins, maybe 6 years old. They were holding each other, staring at nothing with eyes that looked hollow and far away. Rosemary's chest tightened with pain. She had seen that look before, too many times in children who had been through trauma so deep they couldn't find their way back to the real world. "Those are Mr. Ross's daughters," the manager said quietly. "They've been through a lot." Rosemary didn't respond with words. She just stood there looking at Elizabeth and Emily and whispered under her breath, "Oh, you poor little ones." She didn't know it yet, but in that moment everything had already begun to change. Rosemary's third day in the house started like the others. She cleaned quietly, moving through rooms like a shadow, trying not to disturb the medical staff that filled the house all day long. Late afternoon she found herself in the living room picking up scattered papers and straightening cushions on the furniture. The twins were on the couch as always, silent and together. Rosemary worked around them, her mind drifting to memories she usually kept locked away. Without even thinking about it, a melody slipped from her lips, soft, almost a whisper. "His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me." It was her grandmother's favorite hymn, a church song, the one she used to sing while cooking Sunday dinner, while folding laundry, while rocking Rosemary to sleep as a child. Rosemary didn't even realize she was singing until she noticed the silence had changed somehow. She looked up and Elizabeth and Emily were staring at her, not through her like she was invisible, but at her, actually seeing her. Their eyes, those hollow empty eyes, were focused, present, really seeing her for the first time. Rosemary froze, the cleaning cloth still in her hand. "Oh," she whispered. "I'm sorry, sweethearts, I didn't mean to disturb you." But the girls didn't look away, they just kept watching her like they had heard something they had been waiting for, something important. Rosemary's throat tightened with emotion. She gave them a small, gentle smile, then went back to cleaning. But her hands were shaking because she knew something had just happened, something real. William saw it from the hallway. He had been walking to his office when he noticed Rosemary in the living room. He was about to keep going when he saw his daughters' faces. They were looking at her, really looking, not staring off into space but actually seeing another person. His heart stopped beating for a second. He stood there barely breathing, afraid that any movement or sound would shatter whatever was happening in that moment. Over the next few days something shifted in the house. The girls started following Rosemary with their eyes whenever she entered a room. They would turn their heads slightly when she spoke. Once Elizabeth reached out and touched the edge of Rosemary's sleeve as she walked past. Rosemary never made a big deal out of any of it. She just kept doing her work, humming softly, sometimes talking to herself in that gentle way of hers. "Okay, now where did I put that dustpan? Oh, there it is. My grandmother used to say I'd lose my head if it wasn't attached to my neck." And the girls would listen, not with words but with something deeper. Something inside them was waking up. William watched it all from doorways, from the top of the stairs, from the shadows where they couldn't see him. He saw Emily tilt her head when Rosemary laughed at her own joke, saw Elizabeth's mouth twitch at the corner like she was trying to remember how to smile. Tiny changes, so small anyone else would miss them completely. But to William they felt like watching the sun break through clouds after 9 months of darkness. He wanted to hope desperately with all his heart, but he had learned that hope was dangerous. It could hurt you when it was taken away. So he just watched and waited and prayed that whatever light Rosemary had brought into his house wouldn't fade away and disappear. 2 weeks later William came home early from the office. He had meetings all day but couldn't focus on anything. His mind kept drifting back to the house, to the girls, to the small changes he had been seeing every day. He unlocked the front door and stepped inside and heard something that made his heart stop completely. Laughter, faint and fragile but unmistakable. Real children's laughter. What? He dropped his briefcase and it hit the floor with a thud, his pulse racing like he had been running. The sound was coming from upstairs, from the girls' bedroom. William moved toward the stairs, each step careful and quiet like he was afraid of scaring away something sacred and precious. The laughter came again, soft giggles, and then voices, children's voices actually talking. His hands started shaking uncontrollably. He reached the bedroom door. It was cracked open just a little bit. He pushed it gently and looked inside. Rosemary was lying on a cushion on the floor, one hand on her forehead, pretending to be sick. Elizabeth and Emily stood over her wearing little white coats, old Halloween costumes from years ago. Toy stethoscopes hung around their necks and they were talking, actually using words. "Miss Rosie, you need to take your medicine," Elizabeth said, her voice small but clear as a bell. Emily nodded seriously, holding out a plastic bottle. "It'll make you feel better." Rosemary smiled, playing along with the game. "Oh, thank you, doctors, I feel better already." The girls giggled again, the most beautiful sound William had ever heard. William's knees buckled underneath him. He grabbed the door frame to keep from falling down, his vision blurring with tears that poured down his face. "They're speaking, my daughters are speaking." He covered his mouth with his hand, trying not to sob out loud and ruin the moment. Rosemary looked up and saw him standing there. Her eyes went wide. "Mr. Ross, don't apologize," he choked out, tears streaming down his face. "Please don't apologize for anything." He couldn't say anything else, couldn't form any more words. He just stood there shaking, watching his daughters play like normal children for the first time in 9 months. Like they had come back from somewhere very far away. That night after the girls were asleep, William called Marcus. His hands were still trembling as he dialed the number. "Marcus, they spoke. Elizabeth and Emily spoke. It's a miracle." There was a pause on the other end, long enough to feel wrong and uncomfortable. "William, are you sure that's a positive sign?" William frowned, confused. "What do you mean? They're talking after 9 months, how is that not good?" "That's exactly why I'm concerned," Marcus interrupted, his voice measured and clinical like a doctor. "You said they were with the housekeeper when this happened?" "Yes, Rosemary, she's been." "And they called her Miss Rosie?" "Well, yes, but—" "William, this could indicate transfer psychosis." Marcus's tone shifted, colder now. "A distorted attachment to a caregiver. It can lead to serious psychological dependence, possibly dangerous for the girls." The joy in William's chest started turning to ice, cold and scary. "Dangerous?" "Marcus, she's been helping them." "Has she?" Marcus cut in sharply. "William, what do you actually know about this woman? About her past? Why she's working as a maid instead of something better?" William hesitated, his mind racing. I don't know exactly." A pause that felt heavy. "Let me look into her background, just to be safe, for the girl's sake." William's stomach twisted into knots. "I'll call you tomorrow," Marcus said, and the line went dead, just a dial tone. William sat in the dark, the phone still in his hand, and felt the miracle slipping through his fingers like water, like sand, like something he couldn't hold on to. Marcus called the next morning. William was in his office when the phone rang. He picked it up on the first ring. "William, we need to talk about Rosemary James." His stomach dropped at the serious tone in Marcus's voice. I had someone look into her background," Marcus continued. "She was a nurse at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, lost her license 3 years ago after a child died under her care." William felt the room tilt and spin. "What?" "A medication error. The child didn't survive. The hospital took away her license. She's been hiding this from you, William. She's unsupervised with your traumatized daughters." William's hand tightened on the phone until his knuckles turned white. "Are you sure about this?" "Completely sure. I can send you the documentation if you need proof." William hung up and sat in silence, his mind spinning in circles. His daughters had spoken for the first time in 9 months because of Rosemary, but a child had died under her care according to Marcus. What if she's dangerous? What if I'm risking their lives by letting her stay? That evening he called Rosemary into his office. She came in quietly, her hands folded in front of her, looking nervous. "Rosemary." William started, his voice heavy. "Is it true you used to be a nurse in Philadelphia?" Her face went pale, all the color draining away. "Yes, sir." "And a child died?" Her eyes filled with tears that spilled over. "Mr. Ross, I tried to save that little boy. The doctor made a mistake with the dosage. I did everything I could to help him, but it wasn't enough." "But you didn't tell me any of this," William said, his voice rising with anger and fear. "You hid this from me." "Because no one would hire me if they knew," she whispered, her voice breaking into pieces. "I wasn't trying to deceive you or lie. I needed to work to survive, to pay for food and rent." William looked away, his jaw tight, the words hard to say. "I think you need to leave." The words hung in the air like a death sentence, heavy and final. Rosemary nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks in streams. She didn't argue, didn't beg him to let her stay. She just turned and walked to the door with her head down. William heard small footsteps on the stairs. Elizabeth and Emily were standing there watching everything, their faces crumpled when they saw Rosemary crying. "Miss Rosie?" Elizabeth's voice was so small and broken. Rosemary gave them a sad smile, tears running down her face. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're going to be okay, I promise." But the girls started crying, silent tears, the same hollow, empty tears from 9 months ago, when their mother died. They reached for her with their little arms, but William stepped between them, blocking the way. "Say goodbye, girls." Rosemary walked out the front door, and it closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything. Elizabeth and Emily stood at the bottom of the stairs, tears streaming down their faces, not making a single sound, just crying silently. By morning they had stopped talking again. They sat on the floor of their room holding each other, staring at nothing, just like before, exactly like the day their mother died. William knelt in front of them, his hands shaking. "Please, sweethearts, please talk to Daddy, say anything." But they didn't even look at him, didn't acknowledge he was there, and he knew deep in his heart he had made the worst mistake of his entire life. 3 days passed slowly, each one worse than the last. William tried to restart the old therapy schedule with Marcus's team, but the girls were worse than before Rosemary came. They wouldn't eat even when he begged them, wouldn't sleep through the night, just sat by the window waiting for someone who wasn't coming back ever. He couldn't breathe in his own house, the air felt thick and heavy. One night he went into his office and started going through the medical files that Marcus's team had been sending for months, documents he had never had the energy to read closely before. He was looking for anything, any clue about what to do next to help his daughters. That's when he found it, a thick folder buried under expense reports, with a red binder clip that was different from all the others. The label read, "External Evaluation, Boston Children's Hospital." William frowned, confused. Marcus had never mentioned another hospital. Looking at the girls, he opened the folder carefully. The first page had a logo he recognized, Boston Children's Hospital Pediatric Psychiatry Department, and a name, Dr. Sarah Chin, Clinical Director. His heart started pounding in his chest. He flipped the page and the diagnosis was right there at the top in bold letters. Acute grief response with selective withdrawal, prognosis excellent with proper emotional support, full recovery expected within 6 to 12 months. William stopped breathing. He read it again and again, couldn't believe what he was seeing. Excellent prognosis? Full recovery expected? The recommendations were clear and simple. Avoid invasive interventions, increase warm, consistent caregiver presence, music therapy, play-based connection, patient time for natural grieving. Everything that Rosemary had been doing naturally without anyone telling her to. William's hands started shaking as he looked at the date on the report. Month 2, 7 months ago. This report was made 7 months ago. There was a note at the bottom in smaller print. Report submitted to Dr. Marcus Peton per his request to coordinate family care plan, awaiting distribution to family. The folder slipped from William's hands and papers scattered on the floor. Marcus had this report. He had it for 7 months. A report that said his daughters would recover naturally with just love and patience, and he buried it, hid it away, and prescribed the opposite treatment instead, $50,000 every single week going into his pocket. William grabbed his phone, found Dr. Chen's number on the letterhead and dialed with shaking fingers. She answered on the third ring. Dr. Chen speaking. This is William Ross. His voice was shaking with anger and shock. Why didn't I ever receive your report about my daughters? There was a pause then. Mr. Ross, I sent my evaluation directly to Dr. Peton. He was coordinating your daughter's care. He said he would share it with you and discuss the findings. William closed his eyes, feeling sick. I never saw it, not once. I'm very sorry, Mr. Ross. My evaluation clearly stated your daughters would recover with basic supportive care. No experimental treatments were necessary at all. Just time and love. William's hand tightened around the phone. Thank you, doctor. Thank you for telling me the truth. He hung up and sat in the darkness, everything becoming clear now. Marcus didn't just fail to help his daughters, he kept them sick on purpose so he could keep charging money, and 3 years ago he destroyed Rosemary's career to cover up his own mistake that killed a child. William stood up, his jaw set, his eyes hard with determination. You're done, Marcus, you're finished. He picked up the phone again. This time he wasn't calling a doctor, he was calling his lawyers, the best lawyers money could buy. William didn't sleep that night at all. He made phone calls, lots of them, forensic accountants who investigate money crimes, medical fraud investigators, attorneys who had built careers taking down corrupt doctors who hurt people. Bring me everything on Marcus Peton, he told them. I want every detail, every lie, everything. Within 48 hours they had it all. Marcus hadn't just hidden one report, he had been running a network of fraud for years and years. Falsified diagnoses, unnecessary treatments, insurance schemes, patients who didn't need experimental therapies but got them anyway because Marcus got paid lots of money for each one, and buried deepest in the files, hidden away, was Philadelphia 3 years ago. A medication error that killed a child. The doctor who made the fatal mistake was Marcus Peton himself. The nurse who tried to save that little boy and reported the error honestly was Rosemary James. Marcus had forged the incident report, made up lies, destroyed her career to protect himself, then moved to Boston and built an empire on lies and fraud. William stared at all the evidence spread across his desk, pages and pages of proof, and whispered, How many lives did you destroy, Marcus? How many families did you hurt? When federal investigators, the police who handle big crimes, arrested Marcus at Mass General Hospital, the cameras were everywhere, news reporters and photographers. He was led out in handcuffs, his face pale and scared, his prestigious career crumbling and falling apart in real time. Other victims came forward one after another, families he had exploited and lied to, careers he had destroyed just like Rosemary's. The trial was brutal and harsh. The sentence was 15 years in federal prison, medical license taken away forever, $8 million in restitution, money he had to pay back. William didn't watch the verdict being read. He was already in his car driving to Dorchester, a neighborhood in Boston. He pulled up to a small apartment building and sat for a moment gathering his courage. Then he climbed the stairs and knocked on Rosemary's door. She opened it, her eyes red from crying for days. Mr. Ross? I was wrong, he said, his voice breaking with emotion. Rosemary, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have listened to you instead of him. Rosemary's hand covered her mouth, tears starting again. The medical board reinstated your license this morning. William continued. They cleared your name completely. You're a nurse again. You can work again. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She couldn't speak. But more than that. William said quietly. My daughters need you. I need you. Please come home. Please come back to us. Rosemary looked past him and saw Elizabeth and Emily in the car, their faces pressed against the window, eyes pleading and desperate. She nodded, unable to speak because of all the emotion. The girls burst out of the car, running as fast as their little legs could carry them. Miss Rosie, don't ever leave again, please. They wrapped around her, hugging her tight, and Rosemary knelt down holding them both, crying into their hair. I won't leave, I promise, I'm staying forever. William watched his family, broken and scattered, become whole again right in front of his eyes. The brownstone house filled with life again over the next weeks and months, piano music in the evenings, Rosemary's stories at bedtime, the girls' laughter echoing through halls that had been silent for too long. 10 years later at the Ross Foundation Gala, a fancy party for charity, Elizabeth stood at the podium, a microphone in front of her. She was 16 years old now, confident and strong. One person's kindness saved our lives, she said, her voice strong and clear. When everyone else gave up, when the doctors said we would never get better, one person saw us, really saw us, and gave us hope. In the front row sat Rosemary James, MSN, which means Master of Science in Nursing, clinical director of the Ross Foundation's Children's Trauma Center, a place that helped kids who had been through terrible things. William reached over and took her hand. You gave me my family back, he whispered. You gave me everything. Rosemary squeezed his hand, tears in her eyes, but happy tears this time. We built something beautiful from the broken pieces, we helped each other heal. The girls rushed down from the stage to embrace them both, wrapping their arms around William and Rosemary in one big hug, and in that moment every wound, every battle, every loss had led exactly here, to a family forged not by blood alone but by grace, truth, and love that refused to break no matter what happened.